If you love great stories, you've come to the right place. Subscribe to my channel to make sure you don't miss any new videos. Like and share this video with your friends if you enjoyed it, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Crush them without mercy, encouraged Edgar from the side. Luke didn't hesitate. The tree sped toward the two hooded men, who could do nothing to avoid it. A deafening roar was heard as the tree crashed into the hooded men. The ground shook under the impact, and the earth rose in a cloud of dust and fallen leaves. Both were sent flying through the air like kites. The werewolf grunted in pain as his muscles tensed to resist the impact, but it was all to no avail. He went rolling across the ground at high speed, leaving a trail of dirt in his wake. The faceless one twisted in midair, before crashing into a nearby tree with a thud. He lifted that tree in a matter of seconds. The information we had from his power is wrong, thought the faceless, feeling pain all over his body. His condition was not good at all. The werewolf was in better condition, as his physique was superior to that of the average outcast. However, he could barely stand up. A blow from a 300 kg or more tree at a fast speed is no small joke. A normie would have died with that attack. "They're still alive," Luke muttered in surprise. He didn't think they could survive such an attack. He wouldn't have. His body is only slightly better than normies. The werewolf has stronger bones and muscle tissues than another kind of outcast. The faceless one managed to create a kind of shield that protected him from part of the blow, said Edgar, who had seen everything. Luke went back to controlling the tree he threw earlier. It was easier since he didn't have to exert as much force when pulling it out of its roots. He had to deliver the coup de grace. He didn't know where Sabrina's fucker was. Just as Luke was about to deliver the coup de grace to one of the hooded men, a person appeared. "Luke, what's going on here?" asked Andrew. His appearance wasn't very good. It looked like his fight with Tommy had been intense. Luke, in his battle against the two hooded men, had moved away from Crackstone's crypt and the others. "They are enemies that attacked us out of nowhere," Luke replied, without taking his eye off the werewolf and him faceless, who was trying to get up so as not to be crushed again. As he was about to deliver the coup de grace, he noticed something out of the corner of his eye as Andrew lunged towards him, throwing a blow with his sharp and deadly claws. The speed was slower than that of the hooded werewolf, but as Luke let his guard down, thinking he was with one of his allies and watching for his prey not to escape, he barely managed to dodge the blow. Andrew's claws slashed Luke's chest. His medieval knight costume rips in strips at that part, revealing skin scarred by the claw marks. Luke, with an expression of surprise and pain, stepped back quickly, blood gushing from the wound. Thanks to his observation, Hacky managed to move a few centimeters. Otherwise, the claws would have sunk deep into his chest, and it would have been a mortal wound. "What the fuck?" Luke thought as his girlfriend's brother lunged with murderous intent towards him again. He quickly threw the tree at his new enemy. He didn't know if it was Andrew or if he was being controlled, but he didn't want to die. Andrew or whoever it was jumped the tree, but Luke instantly moved it to follow his movement and hit him. The werewolf used his muscular, hairy, X-shaped arms to cover himself. He was sent flying into a tree. "Damn, it hurts. Luckily, I have more than one aura," Luke thought, looking at the bloody wound on his chest. Before he knew about auras and more of the outcast world, he thought that with his telekinesis, he would be invincible. He wasn't. Although his telekinesis was powerful, there would be death by now if not for his observation Hacky, a white aura ability. Telekinesis had great offensive power, but the defensive had a way to counter it, such as immobilization or sending a person flying with telekinetic waves. Luke wanted to learn about a telekinetic shield, but Edgar, for some reason, didn't want to teach him such a technique. One backslash. "Your power is amazing," said Andrew, getting up. His arms were in shreds with blood and bones popping out. He had a maniacal grin on his face and looked like he was amused to be in that state. "Who the hell are you?" asked Luke with a frown. He knew they weren't manipulating or controlling Andrew, since his personality couldn't change that much. "My name is Amaranth. A pleasure," Andrew said as his face began to change. His stature dropped and his bone structure became smaller. In front of Luke stood a girl about his age, or a little older. Her skin was pale, her hair was snow white, and her eyes were blood red. Her delicate, previously injured arms healed at an incredible speed, until they were in perfect condition. Luke was dumbfounded for several reasons. First, the change of form. Second, the fast healing reminded him of the first witch he faced, although it wasn't as fast. Third, because of the girl's appearance. Although he didn't want to admit it, he had never seen a girl with such a peculiar beauty. First of all, it is almost impossible to find a person with white hair and blood-colored eyes. Amaranth's face was perfect. Her facial features had no imperfections. "Whoa, I didn't expect to find a half-breed," Edgar commented, observing Amaranth. He didn't care about her beauty. He was a ghost hundreds of years old. "Half-breed, what do you mean?" asked Luke. "She's a shapeshifter and a vampire," replied Edgar. "What? How do you know she's a vampire?" asked Luke. He agreed with the shapeshifter thing since he saw how she transformed into Andrew and had seen Natasha transform into other people before. Her pale skin, white hair, and red eyes. However, that's the least of it. Normal shapeshifters can only take on the appearance of others but cannot match the strength and powers of their targets, Edgar began explaining. On the other hand, a shapeshifter and vampire can, at the same time, match the power of the target they were transformed into. This is achieved by taking their blood. Although it will not achieve 100% of the strength, and the effect does not last forever, Edgar finished saying. Edgar couldn't explain further, as Luke was in the middle of a death match, and didn't have time for a class. "Let's see how your blood tastes," said Amaranth, sucking her index finger where it had Luke's blood on it, since with that hand she had attacked him before. "Will she be able to copy my appearance and abilities with just that blood?" asked Luke. "Don't worry, she needs to drink a lot more to copy your abilities. She should bite your neck with her fangs," replied Edgar. Delicious. I've never tasted such delicious blood," Amaranth said with a mad grin. Amaranth began to lick her hand full of Luke's blood with great speed and an expression of pleasure. "Delicious, delicious, delicious, delicious," muttered Amaranth, licking all of Luke's blood from her hand. Her body seemed to be writhing as she tasted the blood. "She's crazy," thought Luke, backing up a few steps. Finally, Amaranth had no more blood to lick and looked at Luke with eyes of desire. "Can I have some of your blood? It won't hurt," Amaranth asked longingly. Any man seeing Amaranth's longing expression would tell her yes instantly, but Luke was grimacing. He did not respond. The tree he used earlier began to float again. "Oh, you're a difficult boy. That makes me want you more," Amaranth said with a longing look at Luke. "Amaranth, we must finish him as quickly as possible," said the faceless one, arriving at his companion's side. Thanks to Luke being distracted, he managed to get to his feet, though he was still badly wounded and would be a liability in battle. "Yeah, half-breed bitch, stop playing around and get serious," said the werewolf with fury in his tone. His condition wasn't very good either. "Shut up, you shit. I do what I want," said Amaranth, making a 180-degree attitude change. Her tone was cold, and she looked with disgust and disdain at her companions. Luke was about to take advantage of the enemy's discussion, and he had grouped up. He could take out all three in a single tree strike, but just at that moment, another person arrived. "Stop if you don't want your companion to die." Luke turned his head and stopped midway through the floating tree. This was the person of short stature and a small build who ordered the hags to attack Veronica and Daphne. Next to him was Enid, imprisoned. Luke's fury increased when he saw the state Enid was in. Her red robe had several cuts where blood was oozing out of her skin. Luckily, the wounds did not appear to be deep and serious. The white mask was no longer on Enid's face. Her expression looked as if her mother had died. She looked like she had cried a lot. "Enid, are you okay?" shouted Luke, who wanted to crush these bastards, but if he made a move, Enid's life would be in danger. "Luke," said Enid. Her eyes were puffy and red. Her lips quivered as she spoke her boyfriend's name. Why is she so sad? Thought Luke, not understanding Enid's state. Luke had sent a telepathic message to Enid when he saw the hooded people in the crypt of Crackstone, telling her not to set foot on the island, but it was too late. Then his girlfriend stopped communicating with him through his mind. This could mean she received a major trauma or something similar. I'm sorry. Sabrina died protecting me, said Enid in a hoarse tone, and tears were again coming out of her eyes. Sabrina died, thought Luke with a raised eyebrow. A memorable sacrifice, said the hooded person in an amused tone. Enid looked at her furiously, but she could not move because of the ropes that bound her whole body. Not even with her superior physical strength could she break them. The rope was not made of a common material. Otherwise, she would have broken them with her multicolored claws. Finish him, ordered the same person. The werewolf began to move cautiously towards Luke in the same way as the faceless one. They didn't know if this guy would stop attacking just because they had a hostage. As for Amaranth, she kept watching Luke. She had no plans to attack him. She wanted to see if he cared about people or not. When the werewolf swung at him, he dodged it with his observation haki. He didn't need to use telekinetic waves. The werewolf's speed was very slow compared to what he had at first. No, no, no. You're not understanding your position. You can't attack or defend, of course, if you want your girlfriend to be safe, said the hooded person while putting his hand on Enid's shoulder. Luke could see how, from the hooded person's hand, fire came out and burned the area of Enid's man, who screamed in pain. You bastard, stop, shouted Luke in fury. In his fury, he couldn't dodge a kick from the werewolf that hit him in the stomach and sent him flying into a tree. That damn werewolf, Luke growled in pain. Never in his life had he been in such a deplorable state. However, he didn't care. He had to save Enid. How would he save her? She was about 10 meters away, and the hooded person would most likely have a way to stop his telekinetic waves, like an artifact or some other method. Immobilization or creating invisible objects with his telekinesis would not do. Besides, the moment he did, he would be attacked by the werewolf. Luckily, his strength has decreased a lot since he crushed it with the tree. That's the trees, thought Luke, closing his eyes and concentrating. With his extrasensory ability, he began to see everything he couldn't see with his eyes. Deeper, under the ground. It looks like this bastard has already accepted his fate, said the werewolf with an evil grin. He had to get revenge on the bastard who left him in this deplorable state. Never mind my life, Luke. Don't let them kill you, cried Enid with tears in her eyes. The goal of these people was to kill everyone. It would be the same whether they killed her now or later when they were done with Luke. As the werewolf was about to deliver a killing blow to Luke, the earth began to shake. Finally, the ground cracked as a large number of tree roots emerged from the earth with impressive ferocity, like the tentacles of some creature. The werewolf did not expect an attack of dozens of roots at high speed that pierced his entire body. He screamed in pain and writhed, but could do nothing. Damn you, I told you to stay still, shouted the hooded person, ready to murder Enid. However, under his feet, roots also came out and attacked him and defended Enid. How did they get here? Thought the hooded person in surprise, and he watched the dozens of roots attack him. Using his fire skills, he managed to fend off the killer roots, but received a few cuts on his cloak and no longer possessed a prisoner. This is dangerous already. He wasn't supposed to be this powerful, thought the faceless one, seeing more and more roots coming out of the ground. It seemed as if the forest itself was coming to life and attacking them. The roots were as thick as muscular arms and as twisted as snakes. They moved at a rapid speed and with great agility. It gets stronger in battle. His talent is monstrous, thought Edgar, looking at Luke with pride. He managed to save his girlfriend and turn the situation around when it was 4 versus 1. The faceless one was engulfed by a root and felt like he would be squeezed like a fruit. Luckily, he already had a teleporter in his hand. He activated it without wasting a second and disappeared from the place. Whoa, surprises me more and more. That makes me want it more, said Amaranth, dodging killer roots. Her agility was superior to that of her werewolf companion. However, this is getting dangerous, thought Amaranth. Seeing more and more roots that wanted to tear her apart, she realized that Luke's goal was to mercilessly murder them. Amaranth pulled out a faceless-like teleporter from one of her pockets and activated it. She disappeared in a second. The place where she was before was bombarded by roots, but no one was there anymore. "Teesh damn rats," Luke cursed, focusing all his attention on the one remaining hooded man he wanted to murder the most since he dared to hurt Enid and threaten him. Why did it all end this way? He shouldn't be so powerful, the hooded man thought furiously as he glared at Luke with hatred. He watched as his companions left the place. His condition was not good either. He was now the sole target of the roots. Although his fire could burn them easily, it would be difficult to burn them all to ashes. "At least I'll kill your girlfriend," thought the hooded man looking towards Enid. He realized that Luke cared about this girl. He could cause him great pain before he left. "Die!" the hooded man shouted. From his eyes, he shot out a bolt of fire that pulverized all the roots in its path and shot toward Enid. "A ray of fire?" thought Luke in surprise as he looked at Enid. His expression turned ugly. He was controlling too many roots. He wouldn't be able to move Enid with his telekinesis in time, as she was bound and her mobility was reduced. Luke desperately watched as the fire ray moved closer to Enid. Just at that moment, a creature running on all fours jumped out at the last moment, saving Enid from being pulverized. The ground where the fire ray passed through was completely black, with some flames burning. "Teesh, she narrowly escaped," thought the hooded person with fury. Now he had to leave this place. His mission had failed. He never thought that what would be a slaughter of outcasts with weak ideals would end this way. "You fucking bitch! Will you go now?" shouted Luke angrily, watching as the hooded woman reached into her pocket for a teleporter. With the ray of fire, he knew it was Sabrina Spellman's bitch. Using all his concentration on a single root, he attacked Sabrina. The speed of the root was much greater than before. First, Luke only decided to control that one root, and because of his fury. The root pierced Sabrina's eye, but before it could pierce her brain, the girl disappeared from the spot. "Shit," cursed Luke, stomping the ground in fury. A bad choice. He felt great pain in all his bones for doing that. "Shit, shit, shit," shouted Sabrina angrily as she pounded the ground with her delicate fists. She felt great pain and burning in her left eye, or rather, where her left eye used to be. Now it has already been destroyed by the root. "Calm down, Sabrina," said the faceless one, already without the hood. His face had no mouth, nose, or anything. Still, when he spoke, he could be heard, and it seemed as if his closed mouth modulated. "Shut up. Why didn't you help Seed kill that bastard?" asked Sabrina, glaring with her one eye at the faceless one. "We tried. At first, my ability countered him, until he lifted a tree hundreds of kilograms and we couldn't do anything anymore. His power is already at an advanced level. Your information was wrong," said the faceless one, justifying himself. Sabrina just clicked her tongue and said nothing more. This was her mistake. Her plan would have been perfect if Luke's strength was as she had thought, but it wasn't. "And you, why didn't you help Seed? If you had hit the bastard Poe next to Seed, he wouldn't have been able to get up," Sabrina asked, looking at Amaranth. Her tone wasn't as angry when she was talking to the half-breed. "I thought Seed was more than enough to finish him off with one blow, but he was useless and ended up dying there," replied Amaranth, lifting her shoulders nonchalantly. "Watch your words, half-breed," shouted the faceless one. Seed was his friend and he had died. "Half-breed this, half-breed that. Shut your mouth if you don't want me to open your mouth and rip out your tongue. Do the faceless ones have tongues?" asked Amaranth with a chilling smile. "Enough, both of you. It's time to go back to the Academy of Dark Arts," said Sabrina, interrupting the fight. "Father will be angry," thought Sabrina resignedly. The sight of the fight between Luke and the hooded people was a mess. There were roots on the ground everywhere, burned parts, and a log lying on its side. Luke rushed over to Enid. The person who had saved her was Andrew, her older brother. He had used the full werewolf form to get a faster speed. Andrew was already in human form, hugging Enid. His condition was not very good. He had several cuts and wounds. "Are you okay, Enid?" asked Luke, concerned. "Luke!" exclaimed Enid, hugging her boyfriend tightly. "Ouch!" growled Luke at the claw wound he had on his chest. In addition to that wound, he had the occasional broken bone and was out of energy. Controlling so many roots was a big challenge for him. The tree roots were buried deep in the ground, and it took a lot of concentration to control them. He also exceeded his limit because of his fury and hatred at seeing Enid hurt. "I'm sorry," said Enid, looking worriedly at the wound on Luke's chest. "It's okay. Are you all right?" asked Luke, examining Enid's body carefully. Her only serious injury was the burn on her shoulder, and it was no big deal. "Yes, don't worry about it, just minor injuries. Thanks for saving me," said Enid, suddenly kissing Luke. Luke was surprised by the sudden, passionate kiss, but accepted it. It was a nice feeling after a battle to the death. His anger was subsiding thanks to that, and the fact that his pretty girlfriend was okay. "Cough, cough," coughed Andrew several times, and the couple broke apart with some embarrassment. Veronica and Daphne were facing two hags. "We should go help them," commented Luke. "Don't worry, Tommy and Brad are helping them. They should have defeated them by now," said Andrew, and Luke sighed in relief. He didn't feel like going to face two quasi-immortal hags. "I don't understand why no one from the school came to the island. They should have realized something was wrong by now," Andrew added. "Those guys came prepared. They even had teleporters to get away," Luke said with a grimace. "They most likely set up a barrier or something so that no one could enter the island while they were carrying out their attack." "But who were they? Why did they attack us?" asked Enid. Andrew shook his head. He had no idea. Luke said nothing. He knew Sabrina's goal was to kill him, and it seems she brought companions to help her on her mission. "Is that guy alive?" asked Andrew, looking toward the hooded man who was pierced by several roots. It looked like he was crucified, but with roots. "I doubt it," replied Luke. The roots must have gone through several of his organs. He would only be alive if he had regeneration like a hag, and that was not the case. Even a hag would have died since so many roots would most likely have gone through the black heart. As for how he felt about murdering a person, or rather, a werewolf, Luke felt no remorse or guilt. It was either that or being killed by that werewolf. "A shame. We could have questioned him," said Andrew, shaking his head slightly. Enid looked at the hooded man, pierced by roots, without much emotion. She didn't seem scared to see a dead person, especially since it was someone who wanted to kill her boyfriend and she didn't know him. "This is the world of outcasts," thought Luke, a little surprised and relieved at the same time. He thought Enid would look at him as a crazed killer, but that wasn't the case. "You said Sabrina died?" asked Luke, looking at Enid. Enid's face returned to a droopy, sad expression. Her eyes became glossy, on the verge of tears. "Did those bastards manage to kill someone?" asked Andrew, gnashing his teeth in fury. In his case, because of the fight he was having with Tommy, he was surprised and attacked by a pretty white-haired vampire girl. Because of his distraction, the girl managed to bite his neck and suck his blood. She then swept the ground with him and Tommy and left the scene as she felt a tremor in the earth. Thanks to the half-breed leaving, they were able to recover with Tommy. When Sabrina and I saw the crypt in the distance and the fight between Veronica and Daphne against two hags, we wanted to go help them, but we were intercepted by that hooded person. He attacked us, but his focus was on Sabrina," began Enid, taking a breath. "In one of his attacks, he completely engulfed Sabrina in the fire until he burned her completely," she added after a few seconds, shedding tears and hugging Luke tightly again. This time, Luke kept the whining inside and hugged Enid, patting her back to calm her down. "Let's meet up with the others and head back to the canoes," Andrew said after a few minutes. Enid nodded, wiping away her tears, and they started walking. In a few minutes, they arrived back at the crypt. Two mangled bodies of hags could be seen lifeless. It seemed that Veronica, Daphne, and Tommy knew about the black heart of these abominable creatures. The three of them were sitting on the ground, catching their breath, in not at all pleasant conditions. They had cuts on various parts of their bodies and more wounds. The worst of all was Tommy, since unlike Andrew, he did have to get involved in the battle when he was already wounded. "You two go ahead. I'll go check on the body," Luke said, turning away. Andrew and Enid nodded. A little further away, they could see a burned area and some sort of humanoid figure lying on the ground. Luke moved closer and was finally able to see the body lying charred on the ground. The skin was as black as night. The skin had contracted and cracked under the intense heat. An acrid stench from the smoke and burnt flesh permeated the air, permeating Luke's nostrils. "Disgusting," Luke thought in disgust, holding his nose. "This person is not Sabrina," said Luke, looking at Edgar, who hovered and watched the body. "It's possible. It's hard to find two people using the same skill with the same power. Use your third eye to check it out," Edgar said. Luke concentrated. In a few seconds, an eye appeared in the center of his forehead. The eye was similar to his normal eyes. It just had a soft, ethereal light glowing around it, as if it were illuminated. This ability was called the Eye of Truth, a skill that every clairvoyant should learn. It allows the user to see the auras and powers of other people. It is not easy to learn. Luke found it more difficult to learn than learning through the detection of intentions for battle, or, as he calls it, the haki of observation. Looking at the charred body, Luke could see a faint orange aura. With each passing second, the aura became weaker. This was because the person was dead. "Just an orange aura, no trace of a red aura. It's a double," said Luke, clicking his tongue. His third eye disappeared from his forehead quickly. He didn't want others to see it. Luke had already noticed at the canoe race that this Sabrina had a very weak fire, even for what Sabrina had shown at school. On the other hand, he had sensed many similarities between the hooded person who kidnapped Enid and the original Sabrina. As to how she did it, he didn't know, but he didn't care. What good did it do him to know how she implanted a double? With the disguises her team chose, it was easy to plant a double, and her manipulation skills allowed people to willingly sacrifice themselves for her. The person must not have been someone from Nevermore. Surely it was a Spellman minion or something. With nothing more to see, he returned to the group. When everyone had regained their energy, they started walking to the canoes. No one was thinking about the Poe Cup. What had happened here was a big scandal. The trip was silent. Everyone was processing what had just happened. A Nevermore student was killed by unidentified people. The only one who seemed unaffected by this was Luke, as he knew it was all a hoax, even though the dead person was real. There were two dead people. Only one of those people was one of the attackers. No one counted hags as equal beings to normal outcasts. Halfway through, they encountered a large crowd of people. The other team members, Principal Weems, and all the teachers. They were horrified to see the state of the students, and more so when they heard about the attack by the strangers and that one student had burned to death. It was a long day for Luke. Thus, the 125th edition of the Poe Cup came to an end. Without a winner, the most tragic Poe Cup since the competition was created. The month of May had begun. It had been a few days since the end of the tragic Poe Cup, where Sabrina Jones was burned to death in an attack by an unidentified group. Luke learned that Sabrina was an orphaned psychic. That was her false identity, just as Luke lived in a normie orphanage. Luke didn't know whether to laugh at this. It seemed she copied his background. It was rare to see orphaned psychics, but that didn't mean they didn't exist, and the last name Jones was common in the normie world. The days following the attack were very busy. Many parents came to Nevermore to see their children. So did the authorities. Not normie authorities, authorities from the outcast society. Luke met the outcast cops for the first time. They had not appeared in Wednesday's series. He was questioned by them, not by criminals, as a witness to the incident. He was not the only one. All the students who were at Raven Island had to converse with the outcast police. "So, you used your telekinesis to control the roots and murder the hooded man who was a wolf shoulder." asked a middle-aged man with a serious face. His beard was somewhat unkempt, and he wore a black uniform with a distinctive badge on the right side. Yes, before he attacks me with his huge claws, Luke said, emphasizing that part. Don't worry, you won't have charges against you. It was self-defense, and there were witnesses. Otherwise, you would have ended up like your classmate, said the man. Luke nodded. The outcast rules were too different for his luck. Even though he killed a person, he wouldn't even get a punishment. I don't know why I'm surprised. They let two major families be at war and try to exterminate each other, Luke thought. They obviously didn't know that the Spellman family had dealings with demons, so they let him fight the Poe family, turning a blind eye. They wouldn't let them fight in a public place and innocent people die, but as long as they kept the matter private, the police and the powers that be would pretend nothing was going on. He controlled dozens of roots that totaled over 1,000 kilograms and finished off a werewolf, a faceless one, a half-breed, and an elemental psychic. A genius, thought the middle-aged man. I will look into the story you told me earlier. If it's true, the Spellmans took their grudge where they shouldn't have, said the policeman with a stern expression. Luke nodded slightly. In the first interrogation, he told him that the person who tried to kill him was Sabrina Spellman, and it wasn't the first time she had tried to kill him. He told him about the incident at the gym. But in that case, since it was just the two of them and their grudge, it would be okay for Sabrina to act. But it is not the same in this incident, where they directly attacked Nevermore as if they were terrorists and endangered the lives of several students from dangerous families. In telling this story to the policeman, Luke received information that left him confused. According to the cop, the Spellmans do not have a daughter named Sabrina who possesses a dual aura and attends the Academy of Dark Arts. Luke wanted to find Sabrina, or whatever her name was, grab her head and slam it repeatedly against the floor. The bitch had lied to him in the interrogation he'd done in the gym. He should learn how to read old memories as soon as possible to be much more effective at getting information. He also learned that the werewolf, the one he killed, does not belong to the Academy of Dark Arts, so he is not a schoolmate as he first thought. According to Edgar, they must be hidden servants of the great psychic families. If they had been schoolmates, they would have risked a lot, since they could identify them without much problem if they have the corpse of the person. Thank you for the information. I will look into it, but next time try to find tangible evidence, said the policeman. He couldn't blame a large psychic family like the Spellmans for such an attack without such evidence, but it wasn't crazy to think that they would want to murder Luke. As a high-ranking agent in the outcast police force, he knows about the old grudge between the Poes and the Spellmans. He doesn't think it's the Spellmans, though. With a little information, he learns that when John Poe attended Nevermore, the Spellmans did not attack him. Nevermore did not suffer terrorist attacks, so it would be strange if they do now, although he would not rule out the possibility 100%. It's nothing, Luke said without giving it much thought. He did not mind revealing this information. The bad news is that he had no tangible proof, but if the outcast police investigation leads to the Spellmans, it could put them in a difficult situation. He has nothing to lose by trying. This is my card. If you have new information and evidence, call me, the policeman told him, handing him a black card with his contact details. Fine, Luke said, putting the card away. The policeman opened the door for him and Luke left the room. Why is there no protection for minors? Luke thought as he walked out the door. Even though he is a minor, he must face the Spellman family alone and with no recourse to third-party help. The only way to get everyone to turn against the Spellmans is to prove they are making deals with demons or through the power of friendship. What a joke. Who would want to help him take on such a powerful family? The Umbrio turned their backs on Sophie, their mother, and let her die along with John. Although in this case, the Spellmans involved third parties putting the lives of the students at risk. If he have no evidence to catch them, nothing will happen to them. Despite Luke's story, since he has no tangible proof, he will not receive any help until he presents it. Although the cop is aware of the grudge between the Poes and the Spellmans. Next, Enid Sinclair, said the middle-aged man. Luke saw Enid sitting on a bench near him. She stood up and started walking toward the room. She waved her hand at Luke and walked into the room. Luke looked at the bench again. There was one more person. Enid's mother, Esther Sinclair, was looking at him with a frown. "Oh no, why me?" thought Luke as their eyes made eye contact. That's why Enid gave him a low hand wave. When she was with her mother, she was much more shy. He would ignore her, but they made eye contact, and if Esther tells Enid that he ignored her, he'll fight later, and that's the last thing he wants. "Hey, what's up, mother-in-law?" said Luke, and he wanted to punch himself against the wall as he listened to what she said more carefully. Calling this grumpy, untrusting woman mother-in-law was not a good way to start a conversation. "I'll never be your mother-in-law," Esther said, standing up and looking at Luke with a blank face. "Whatever you say, I was just saying hello." "Bye," said Luke, seeing the perfect opportunity to escape. "Wait a minute," said Esther, and Luke turned around. "What?" asked Luke. "If you really love Enid, you should leave her," replied Esther, taking Luke by surprise, who wasn't planning on having this kind of conversation with his mother-in-law. "What do you say? I think Enid would have to decide those things for herself," said Luke with a strange expression. "I know a little of the history of the Poe family and the old grudge they have with the Spellman family. Your mother was from the Umbrio family, and she died because she was with your father. I don't want the same thing to happen to my daughter," Esther said tactlessly. Her instinct told her that this incident had to do with Luke. Besides, they took her daughter hostage. Why did they do it? To threaten Luke. She wasn't the only one who thought so. It was to be expected, Luke thought. You should say you'd help your daughter's boyfriend's needy family. Well, the Umbrios didn't help my mother either. I wasn't expecting anything anyway, Luke said after a few seconds. His old concern was rekindled again. Earlier, he had raised the issue of Enid's safety and that they might use her against him as a hostage, and it happened. That day, he decided to be selfish and continue his relationship with Enid. He was hesitant now, but he would not show Esther. He would not give her that pleasure. Esther was surprised at Luke's calmness. If Andrew didn't appear, Enid would have been killed by Sabrina's fire ray, thought Luke, who was still looking at Esther in silence. The atmosphere was tense, and not a single fly was flying. After a few seconds, Luke settled his thoughts and decided to speak. "Don't worry, I'll grant your wish. I don't need Enid's help or yours to annihilate those bastards. If they didn't take her hostage, I could have killed them all," Luke said with a look of hatred and gritted his teeth. He could only kill one. He wasn't satisfied when he defeated them all and had a great chance. Maybe he should have taken a chance and used his blue aura so they couldn't get away with the teleporters, but if he failed, they would know he possessed two auras. Esther took a step back. She was shocked at the murderous intent of releasing a 14-year-old teenager. Sabrina knew of Luke's weakness and used it against him. That was his mistake. He wouldn't let it happen again. "In a few weeks, I will end our relationship. She saw a classmate die recently. Having her attractive boyfriend leave her will put this one in a worse state of mind," Luke said, turning around and leaving Esther alone. Esther looked at Luke's back in surprise. At one moment, he seemed to see Enid as an obstacle, and at another moment, he showed concern for her mental state. When Luke reached the end of the hallway, which was not far from where he had his little conversation with his former mother-in-law, he noticed another familiar person. Veronica Umbrio. Veronica was looking at Luke with a rarely seen expression on her face. She looked like she had overheard the conversation. Luke looked at her for a second and continued on his way. He wasn't in the mood for a conversation. "Hey, wait up," said Veronica, catching up to Luke. The girl had her left arm bandaged, a couple of band-aids on her face, and several bruises all over her body. "What do you want?" asked Luke without pausing. "We need to go to Principal Weem's office," replied Veronica. "We do?" asked Luke hesitantly. "Yes, we have my father, my grandfather, and your housekeeper waiting for us," replied Veronica. "Natasha," thought Luke with a grimace. The last time he'd seen her, he'd gotten a big lecture from her. She was very angry that he didn't tell her about Sabrina Spellman being undercover at Nevermore. If it were up to him, he would have told her, but Edgar told him not to. According to him, it was to have a fight that would put you over the edge. He wasn't wrong, though. After that battle, his powers grew at a crazy rate, much better than training. For the second time, he managed to lift over 1,000 kilograms with his telekinesis. The first time was with the SUV. Also, this time he managed to control the dozens of roots for much longer. His maximum in that battle was about 400 kg, and he lifted more than 1,000, controlling the roots with precision and digging them up. This achievement made his maximum weight grow by several levels. These days, he went to the gym and was able to lift over 800 kg. His strength more than doubled. It is hard to believe. According to Edgar, it was normal since, in a situation of stress and adrenaline, he managed to control more than 1,000 kilograms for several minutes and with precision. So, it was normal that his maximum weight had this substantial increase. His clairvoyance abilities also improved as he used them in battle. His blue aura abilities remained the same since he didn't use them. "All right, let's go," Luke said dryly, heading to a new destination. The last thing he wanted was to be reunited with his mother's relatives. His mother's father and her brother would be Luke's uncle and grandfather. Luke was sitting in Principal Weem's office. There were Natasha, Veronica, the principal herself, and two people Luke didn't want to converse with. His grandfather and his uncle are on his mother's side. His uncle's name was William Umbrio. He was older than Sophie, Luke's mother, and Veronica's father. He is an elegant, well-dressed, middle-aged man. He had a neat beard and sky-blue eyes just like Luke. To Luke, he is like the stereotypical successful businessman who plays golf and laughs like a millionaire. He wasn't far from the truth. The Umbrio family were millionaires with a presence in the normie and outcast worlds. William's face was serious and slightly frowning as he examined Luke, the son of his deceased sister. At no time did he show any affectionate emotions towards his nephew, even though it was the first time he had seen him. His grandfather's name was Stanley Umbrio, the current leader of the Umbrio family. His face was wrinkled. His hair and beard were white, and he had sky-blue eyes. He wore a white formal suit with a tie. Stanley's expression when he saw Luke changed and showed much more emotion than William's. In his grandson, he saw a strong resemblance to his daughter, Sophie. "So, Luke, are you all right? I heard from Veronica that you got injured against those hooded men," asked Stanley in a concerned tone. He sounded like a grandfather concerned for his grandson's health. "Yeah, great. I'm almost dead, but I feel great," said Luke in a sarcastic tone. "Respect your grandfather," said William in a stern tone. "Grandfather, don't confuse things. I do not consider you my family," Luke said with little patience. What he was missing was that now these strangers wanted to resume their family ties with him, after 14 years. The atmosphere in the room fell into an uncomfortable silence. "I didn't gather you here to have an emotional family reunion," said Natasha, breaking the silence. "What did you call us here for, traitor?" asked William in exasperation. Like Luke, the last thing he wanted was to continue to have ties with the Poe family. It was not good business. "Traitor," repeated Luke in confusion. "Yes, traitor. Your housekeeper was a servant of the Umbrio family. Or do you think your father, the last member of the ruined Poe family, would have a servant? Of course, he wouldn't. She followed my sister into the Poe family's personal war. We are putting our family in a very awkward situation," William explained with some derision. "Well, I didn't know that," thought Luke without giving much importance to the mockery of his nice and sympathetic uncle. From what he heard from Edgar, Natasha was closer to his mother, so it made sense that she belonged to the Umbrio family. "That's enough, William. Why did you ask us to meet here, Natasha?" asked Stalin, looking at Natasha. "For you to read this," Natasha replied, pulling out 2 old rolls of paper from one of her pockets. Both rolls were old. They looked to be several years old since they were used. "What is this?" asked Stalin, taking one of the rolls passed to him by Natasha. The other roll she handed to Larissa, who looked on in confusion. Luke had no idea what was going on either. "The last 2 letters Sophie wrote days before her death," Natasha replied. Stalin's hands shook, and he looked at the letter with some regret. Larissa also seemed to go through many emotions as she looked at the letter. "Why are you handing them over now?" asked William cautiously. "I got them back recently. When I returned to Jericho after many years, this was the right time for them to be read," replied Natasha. Both Stalin and Larissa unrolled the letter, which was long, and began to read it in silence. The atmosphere in the room was silent again. William approached his father and read the letter. "What does that letter say?" asked Luke, mentally having a bad feeling. "Something that will save us time to fight the Spellmans," replied Natasha. "I thought the Poe family's problems should be solved by the Poe family," said Luke, remembering an old phrase Natasha said when she talked to Larissa months ago in this very office. "Just shut your mouth," said Natasha with a slight frown. She said that phrase referred to normal Poe family grudges, like vendettas, family wars, and the usual stuff. However, when demons are involved, it's different. It's already a much bigger problem. At the time, she met with Larissa months ago and said that phrase was because she couldn't tell her that the Spellmans were making deals with demons. Instead, she will now read Sophie's letter. "I've got my mouth shut," Luke said through his mind. "You're very annoying when you put your mind to it. Just shut your telepathic mouth," said Natasha, rolling her eyes. "Is this true?" asked Stalin, who finished reading the letter. His eyes were shining. It seemed that at any moment a tear or two might escape his eyes. "Why didn't she ever tell me? I would have helped her no matter what," Larissa said, wiping the tears from her eyes. "Father, this doesn't make any sense at all. Is the prestigious Spellman family making deals with demons? Impossible. My sister wants to manipulate you so that the Umbrio family will help the Poe family with their war," said William, raising his tone of voice. "Why would she tell you after she's dead?" asked Natasha angrily. "I don't know. Who knows what was going through her head? Those accusations are very serious. A simple letter saying that the Spellmans make deals with demons is not enough," said William. "Silence! Why didn't Sophie tell me this before?" asked Stalin regretfully. If he had known sooner, he would not have abandoned his daughter. Unlike William, he did believe Sophie's letter. "Because she didn't want to put the Umbrio family in a difficult position. She knew she needed hard evidence so that the Umbrio could intervene directly," replied Natasha. "And why did she write this without any hard evidence?" asked William. "Didn't you read the letter?" asked Natasha. William looked at Luke for several seconds, clicked his tongue, and stopped looking at him. "What was that?" thought Luke. "All right, I'll comply with Sophie's last request," said Stalin, putting the letter in one of his pockets. "Father, we can't do that. That will show that we will take a stand against the Spellmans. A war is not good for our family," said William in disbelief. "The decision is made, William," said Stalin in an irrefutable tone. "I don't want them to face the Spellmans. I just want Luke to spend his summer vacation at the Umbrio farm. You know, a grandfather sees his deceased daughter's grandson for the first time. That position will keep the Spellmans from freaking out, and they won't want a war," Natasha explained, and Luke's expression turned ugly. He didn't want help from anyone, and as he was about to speak, Natasha kept talking. "I want you to know that the thing about Sophie's letter is real. You can believe it or not. For now, that would be all the help we need." "Fine, we'll do it," nodded Stalin. After a few more words, the entire Umbrio family left the room. Luke was still silently processing what had just happened. "I believe Sophie's words. I will help in any way I can," Larissa said in serious tones. "Thank you, I won't ask anything of you for now. I don't think it goes without saying, but keep everything under wraps. Until we have proof, we can't bring this information out in the open. It's very sensitive," Natasha said, and Larissa nodded. "If they accuse the Spellmans of making deals with demons without any proof, it would put them in a worse situation. The Spellmans would be perfectly justified in attacking with all their might in the face of such unproven accusations." Luke and Natasha, left Larissa's office, and began walking down the halls of Nevermore. "Why?" asked Luke. He was not at all at ease about having to spend his vacation at the Umbrio farm. Natasha didn't even ask for his opinion about this. "You've been attacked 3 times already, twice at Nevermore. If you stay in Jericho, you're not safe, and even less so now that you've put a Spellman's eye out," Natasha replied, and Luke regretted telling her about that part of the battle. "Where is the evidence my parents collected?" asked Luke. If they had that in their hands, they could show it to the world, damage Spellman's reputation, and make the authorities keep an eye on them. It wasn't that Luke was afraid to take on the Spellman on his own, but it wasn't logical. He was only one person, 2 if you counted Natasha. The war with the Spellmans is about 170 years old. How many members do the Spellmans have? There must be dozens of members, and the final boss is still alive since he got immortality through his satanic deal. If more former members made demonic deals that granted them immortality, he would face more people. No matter how super powerful he is, he would die when facing dozens of members, some with demon-enhanced powers, and the person who killed his great-great-grandfather, who knows what power he has now. "I don't have them in my possession. I'm tracking them down. It won't take me long to find where they hid them," Natasha replied, biting her lip. "You don't have them in your possession?" asked Luke. "No, your parents were hunted down by the Spellmans and killed. Before that, they had to hide the evidence they had collected. I wasn't with them because I was babysitting a stupid crybaby. After they died, I had to change my identity and hide with you," Natasha replied. "I'm not stupid," muttered Luke. "Do you hate my father?" asked Luke after a few seconds. "What's with that question?" asked Natasha with a raised eyebrow. "Well, you were very close to my mother, and her getting together with my father got her involved in a war against the Spellmans, and she ended up dying," replied Luke. "I didn't like your father at first. If you're part of the old outcast families, it's easy to find out about the silent war that was going on between the Poes and the Spellmans. None of the Umbrio liked your mother wanting to marry your father, who was on the losing side," Natasha said. "But your mother didn't care about that. She found out the real story, and her reasons for being and fighting with your father became stronger. I, as your mother's servant, followed her and believed in her judgment. I was not wrong," she added. "I see," Luke said. "Worried about your wolf girlfriend?" asked Natasha. "It's not that. I'm going this way," Luke said, waving goodbye to Natasha. "It's hard dealing with teenagers," Natasha muttered, shaking her head. After today's class was over, Luke left the classroom and began to make his way to his dorm room. It was only a short time before exams and the end of the school year. As he turned one of the hallway corners, he could see a makeshift altar of sorts. In the center was a smiling photograph of Sabrina Spellman, or rather, Sabrina Jones. Many flowers of different colors decorated the picture. There were 4 red candles lit, and they didn't seem to melt. "We will miss you," read Luke, one of the many dedications and phrases written near the altar. What a joke, thought Luke with a slight wry smile. Everyone thought Sabrina had died, but she had not. She was still alive, and she was the one who wanted to kill everyone because she wanted to kill him. Since the information he told police and school personnel about Sabrina Spellman could not be confirmed, it was maintained that Sabrina Jones died. "Why are you smiling?" Luke turned his head slightly and saw a girl with freckles and a very short stature looking at him with a very unfriendly face. "Well, I remembered what a great and good person Sabrina Jones was," replied Luke in an overdone tone. "You weren't close to her," the freckled girl said. "She was one of Sabrina's best friends, and she never saw Luke near Sabrina." "I know. The above was sarcasm," Luke said without changing his expression. "You think my friend's death is funny?" the girl asked angrily. "Friend, my goodness. Ignorance serves a purpose. The trauma would be greater if she knew the real Sabrina is still alive and hates her," thought Luke, shaking his head. Luke's gesture only made the short, freckled girl angrier. Her friend, who was observing the situation, had a frightened expression as she looked at Luke. Sorry, we're leaving, said the girl, taking her friend, who seemed to want to attack Luke, as a very bad idea. Anna, what are you doing? Asked the freckled girl as she was dragged away from Luke. Are you crazy? Do you want him to kick you in the face like that werewolf boy? Or worse, he could murder you, Anna said, looking back in fear. She sighed in relief when she saw that Luke didn't chase after them. I can hear you, thought Luke, not giving it any more thought and resuming his walk to his bedroom. He noticed several eyes on him. When he looked at them, they all averted their gazes as if he were going to murder them right now. Luke was aware that his reputation since the incident on Raven Island had taken a turn for the worse. Worsened in the sense that everyone now fears him more than before. Before, it was due to his horrible, grumpy, and sarcastic personality. Now it was because he murdered a person. Even though outcasts had a higher tolerance for death and murder compared to normies, a murder was still a murder. He would get looks of fear in either normie or outcast society. Although in the former, it would be much worse. It's better than before, Luke thought. When he attended normie school, he always had to face bullies. Now no one would go near him. When he reached his room, he collapsed on his bed. His face sank into his pillow and he closed his eyes. Luckily, Xavier wasn't around. And he could sleep without needing to engage in conversation. Aren't you going to training? Asked Edgar, coming out of the collar and looking towards Luke, who looked like a corpse. No, later, Luke replied. Are you still suffering for love? Asked Edgar, sighing slightly. It's not that, growled Luke with little patience. Oh, come on. It's been over 10 days since you broke up with that colorful girl, said Edgar. Yes, Luke had ended his relationship with Enid. He complied with Esther's request. It was not a pleasant situation at all. He was uncomfortable and felt a pain in his chest as he watched Enid cry and asked why he was doing it. He couldn't tell her, because your grumpy, nagging mother asked me to. Or, my crazy enemies will want to use you to blackmail me and then murder you like my mother. Shut up. You've been depressed for months without leaving your house. Besides, I'm just tired, said Luke, putting a pillow over his face. That was a very different situation. My wife that I lived with for many years died, you brat, said Edgar indignantly. Oh, I forgot about that part, said Luke, pissing Edgar off even more. I understand it's your first love, but you'll grow out of it. They're usually passing love. I was more surprised that you have feelings, said Edgar. In the last sentence, he muttered to himself. Anyway, it was a romance that would end sooner rather than later. There are two totally different species. It is difficult for such love to prevail. In your case, you must find a psychic to carry on the Poe lineage. Oh, with your genes, a child with 2 auras is almost assured, Edgar said, imagining the rebuilding of the Poe family. Here we go, Luke thought. His ghost great-great-grandfather would begin to ramble on about the future prodigy children Luke would procreate with a psychic who didn't yet know of his existence. According to Edgar, as Luke possesses 3 auras, his children have a good chance of obtaining 2 auras with ease. If going to training makes you shut up, let's go, Luke said, getting up from his bed and putting on his collar. As he was about to leave in the direction of the gym, the door to his room opened. It was Xavier. They both stared at each other in silence. What's up? Where are you going? Asked Xavier after a few seconds. To train, replied Luke. Oh, yeah, I should have guessed, muttered Xavier. Where else could his kind and sociable friend go? This last was sarcasm. It had to be the world upside down for Luke to be kind and sociable. Xavier realized that Luke's personality, since the incident on Raven Island, is reverting to how it was at the beginning of the school year. That, coupled with his breakup with Enid, makes him growl at you every time he opens his mouth. In a few days, the Raven, are you going? Commented Xavier before Luke could leave the room. The Raven is an annual dance hosted by Nevermore at the end of the year. The dance is organized around a specific theme. Normies may even be invited, though it's a rare occasion for a show-up. I don't want to know about events that have Raven in their name, replied Luke with some derision. Well, that's true, Xavier said with a slight smile. However, I don't think some hoods would attack since the fringe police came to Nevermore," he added. "Yeah, I doubt it. Anyway, I'm not going. I don't have a partner," Luke said, shaking his head. The last thing he wants right now is to go to some stupid dance that reminds him of how he kissed Enid for the first time. "I know you don't like dances, and I doubt you want to meet a girl right now. I'm saying this for Ajax. We should support him right now. You know Guy's night," Xavier said, and Luke understood what he meant. Ajax's girlfriend, Sabrina, had died. Calcined. Her body was completely charred. It wasn't Sabrina, though, but only Luke knew that and other people who did not believe him because he did not present evidence. "Ajax's depressive pit is deeper than yours. Help me out on this one," Xavier added. "I'm not in a depressive pit," Luke said with a grimace. "Fine, I'll go," he added. At least he would put some effort into keeping the few friends he has. "Thanks, it's going to be a good night. The theme of the dance is Gothic. Try to go dress like that," said Xavier, patting Luke's shoulder, who nodded. Why didn't they cancel that dance? Luke thought, leaving the room and heading to the gym. 2 hours passed. 40 discs weighing 25 kg each were flying around Luke, a total of 1,000 kilograms. Seeing the time, Luke put all the discs back in place. He was sweatier than he thought. He had trained hard today. "Congratulations on your first ton, and welcome to level 4, Edgar said with a smile. "Thanks, although to get to the top of level 4 I need 9 more tons," commented Luke, thinking the ranking was wrong. The first level was from 0 to 50 kg. Second, from 50 to 200 kg. Third, from 200 to 1,000 kg. Fourth, from 1,000 to 10,000 kg. The differences were getting bigger and bigger. "Don't be hasty. Cases of guys your age at the 4th level are rare and seldom seen in history," said Edgar, looking at Luke as if he were a freakish monster. Even he, a Tuora genius, had not reached that level at Luke's age. "Weights at higher levels have more differences because the principle is the same as before, just on a larger scale or with heavier objects," he added. "I understand," Luke said with a nod. He didn't let his arrogance increase with Edgar's praise. The patriarch of the Poe family had talent similar to or superior to his. Even Edgar had monstrous talent and reached a very powerful level, able to destroy a town of 10,000 people in a fight that did not seek that purpose. "It's time I learned that," thought Edgar. The days passed. The Raven arrived. Luke ordered a Gothic costume online, but not a lame one to wear that night. The dance was no big deal. When Xavier was saying about Ajax's depressive pit, he wasn't lying. Ajax looked like he could slit his wrists at any moment, and the Gothic theme didn't help. Luke tried to be as empathetic and compassionate as possible with his friend Ajax, although he ended up being his friend because he was friends with Xavier. No matter. He doesn't know if it worked at all, but he tried. The worst thing was seeing Enid dressed in Gothic clothes. It was weird to see her in those depressing black clothes, but I respected the theme of the dance, and she looked beautiful. Luke tried to look at her as little as possible so as not to end up in a similar mood as Ajax. A few days after the Raven were the exams. They were not difficult for Luke, as he had a trained photographic memory. It was very easy. Finally, the school year at Nevermore was over, and it was time for the students to go home to enjoy their summer. Bad news for Luke, as he was supposed to enjoy his summer at the Umbrio farm. With family members who loathe him, although the feeling is mutual. Several days had passed since Luke left Jericho. He had already settled into the Umbrio mansion. Rather, in one of the mansions belonging to this wealthy family of outcasts. The Umbrio family had important business dealings in both normie and outcast society. So, their wealth was at the top of the outcast families, although their history was not old. Luke stayed in the largest mansion of all, as it was that of his grandfather, Stalin Umbrio, the current leader of the Umbrio family. From what Veronica told him, Stalin is over 100 years old. He is an elderly psychic, and he already has 50 years left to live. So the old man was already passing a lot of responsibilities to Veronica's father, the next leader. Besides him in the mansion stayed Natasha, but she had left yesterday, leaving Luke with his grandparents, many servants, and Veronica. Yes, her grandmother was still alive and kicking, Sophie's mother. Her name was Elizabeth Umbrio. She had an icy, apathetic look on her face when she met Luke. She barely said a word. She seemed to be against him being there. Luke wasn't disappointed. He didn't expect anything from his family on his mother's side. He was only there at Natasha's request. If the Spellmans dare to attack him at Nevermore, they will likely dare to attack him when he is in Jericho. On the other hand, if he finds himself in the mansion of the leader of a major outcast family, the Spellmans will think twice before attacking. True, they may complain to the Umbrio for getting into personal grudges, but Stalin said he would comply with Natasha's request. The most sensible thing for the Spellmans to do would be to wait until Luke returns to Nevermore and plan another assassination. After all, they won't want to start a war against the Umbrio either. Luke opened his eyes. He saw on the clock on the bedside table that it was 9 o'clock in the morning. He got up lazily and looked at his room. It's not so bad living in a mansion, Luke thought. His room was almost the size of an apartment. It also had a bathroom. After changing and brushing his teeth, he left his room. Today, he had a meeting with his publisher. That was why he was up so early. Carrie has been a resounding success since it was published. The book was averaging between 100,000 to 120,000 copies sold per month. There were still a few months left in the year, and it was already on the verge of reaching 1 million copies sold. For an author publishing his first book, this is something very rare, even more so when the author is just 15 years old. Luke was on the verge of joining the Millionaires Club. He had a 12% royalty from Carrie. Payments were made every quarter, that is, every 3 months. He had recently been given his last payment as he reached month 9. With Carrie's sales alone, he got $1,026,000 USD. Unfortunately, there are taxes, and they are not low. He had to pay approximately 25% tax, so he was left with a final amount of $769,500 USD. He had done some advertising where he got paid and had a little more money, but it wasn't quite $1 million, but it was only a matter of time. Damn stairs, Luke thought. That was the only bad thing about a mansion. You had to walk too far to get to the damn exit. Luke, it's weird you're up so early, said Veronica, running into Luke. Yeah, said Luke, stopping for a second and walking again. Hey, wait up, said Veronica, grabbing Luke by the wrist. What? Asked Luke. I was just about to go to breakfast with Grandpa and Grandma. I was wondering, do you want to join us for breakfast? Said Veronica. No, thanks. I have plans, Luke replied, releasing his grip on the girl and resuming his walk. These days, Luke didn't eat breakfast, nor did he eat with his grandparents and Veronica. It was uncomfortable, and he knew he was not welcomed by his grandmother, Elizabeth. In addition, at some dinners, there are Veronica's parents, who are also not very happy with his stay at the Umbrio mansion. His grandfather is Stalin, and although he treats him kindly, their relationship is not great. Luke doesn't blame him. They are both strangers, and he doesn't even want to get along with the old man, so it's normal for them to be estranged. Even the servants looked at him with cold expressions. This doesn't affect Luke, but he won't waste his time eating in a silent environment. He prefers to eat while watching a series or playing video games. As for his cousin Veronica, Luke kept his distance. He wasn't in the mood to make friends when he broke up with Enid. Luke wondered why Veronica was at Stalin and Elizabeth's mansion instead of with her parents. At first, he thought it was because of his presence, him and his narcissism, but then he realized it was not this. Veronica was here because she was being instructed by Stalin and Elizabeth. Stalin had a blue aura. Elizabeth has a green aura. As Veronica possessed both auras, she was trained by both elders. The girl's position was very high in the Umbrio family, all thanks to possessing 2 auras. Luke could see his grandmother's icy expression change for the first time. This happened when she was talking to Veronica. He could see how rare and important it was to have 2 auras. The Umbrio family had a lot of faith in Veronica. They were grooming her to be the next family leader. Luke's ego grew as he realized this situation was as weird as it sounds. He possessed 3 auras. What face would his arrogant relatives make if they found out about this? The Umbrio family, in its entire history, did not have a member possessing 3 auras. On the other hand, Veronica knew that Luke possessed 2 auras, but she hadn't told any family members. Something Luke was grateful for, or else he would have had to threaten to upload the video. Luke left the mansion and called for a cab to take him to his destination. The Umbrio mansion was located in the state of Florida, in the city of Sarasota. If he could drive, he would buy a luxury car, but he had to turn 16 to get a license. "Aren't you afraid they'll attack you?" Edgar asked, coming out of the necklace Luke wore around his neck. "No, I doubt they will. If they did while I stayed with the Umbrio, they would be stepping on his honor or something," Luke replied as he looked out the car window, facing the ocean. If the Umbrio protected him for his entire life, the Spellman would not stand still and start a war, but if it's for a few months, they would most likely turn a blind eye. "And if they attack me, it will make my summer a little more fun," Luke added. Since he finished with Enid, he has devoted more time to training. Every day, he was getting stronger under Edgar's guidance. A 3-aura user is far above average, even for 2-aura users. The genetics for a psychic to possess 3 auras are perfect, which gives Luke incredible talent. This adds to his hard work. And the fact that he is a reincarnated person makes him have enormous growth. Every day, he sees progress, and bottlenecks are almost non-existent. To this, we must add the guidance of a person like Edgar. In his previous life, he was the strongest psychic in the U.S. and trained many members of his family for revenge against the Spellman. Also, his auras make for very good synergy. For example, thanks to his extrasensory clairvoyance ability, he can use his telekinesis on unseen objects. A beginner intermediate telekinetic could not move roots that were buried several meters in the ground. Since he is not seeing them, this can be done by an advanced telekinetic. However, Luke has no such limitation thanks to his white aura. His blue aura enhances his mind in many ways. Photographic memory leads to better comprehension, which makes learning and training easier, since his comprehension is higher. Edgar said nothing about Luke's reckless comment. He agreed. He saw firsthand Luke's monstrous talent. He knew the extent of his powers. It would be difficult to say that it is impossible for an outcast his age or slightly older to assassinate him. Sabrina Spellman, despite being from the elite family and possessing 2 auras, had no chance of assassinating Luke traditionally. She didn't even make it, being 4vs1 and having a hostage. Luke arrived at his destination. He entered a quaint coffee shop overlooking the beach and ocean. A middle-aged man in a Hawaiian shirt and sunglasses greeted him from a chair. "How have you been, Luke?" the middle-aged man asked. His name was Josh, and he was his publisher. He greeted Luke enthusiastically with a handshake, and then they sat down. "Order whatever you want. My treat," Josh said with a big smile. "It's not like I'll be short on money, but thanks," Luke said, opening the menu. He would order a big breakfast. After ordering, Luke looked at Josh. The first time he saw him, he looked like a typical office guy with dark circles under his eyes who works more than 12 hours a day and hates his life. Now, however, he had a grin from ear to ear. A flashy Hawaiian shirt and rock star sunglasses. "Why so happy?" asked Luke. "Isn't it obvious? Your second book is finally finished, and I have other great news," replied Josh with a big smile. Yes, Luke had already finished his second book. Rather, the plagiarism. While at Nevermore, he wrote it thanks to his photographic memory. It was easy, but this time he respected a little more the steps of a writer working with a publisher. He kept sending them unfinished manuscripts. He had meetings with Josh about the book and stuff. He knew he didn't have to, but he had to take some action. His second book would be The Mystery of Salem's Lot, a vampire fiction book. In his past life, it was one of his favorite Stephen King books, although it didn't reach it, Carrie, or The Shining in sales. "Oh, what's the good news?" asked Luke, curious. "Carrie will be brought to the big screen," replied Josh excitedly. "Oh, sooner than I imagined," thought Luke with a faint smile. This means more money for him, as the production company that wants to film Carrie will have to pay for adaptation rights. "How much will they pay for adaptation rights?" asked Luke. He had no power in this, as with his contract with the publisher, they had the bargaining power. However, his contract explicitly stated that he would retain a portion of the adaptation rights. "You're quieter than I expected," Josh said, looking strangely at Luke. Any normal person would jump at the news that his movie would be in theaters. It was to be expected after Carrie had so many sales. "How much?" asked Luke again. $1 million, Josh replied with a slight smile as he saw Luke almost choke on his coffee. "That much? The book didn't even make it a year," Luke said in surprise, setting the mug down on the table. He thought at most they would have paid $500,000, not double. "It's for that reason. The book isn't even a year old and already has almost 1 million sales. I'd like to toast with some alcohol, but you're a minor, and it's 10 in the morning," Josh said with a smile. As Luke's publisher, he would take a bonus, which, although it wasn't within the percentage, was still the salary he makes in a full year. Plus, he now had Luke's second full book ready to produce, which translates into more money for everyone. Everybody wins, and that's why he's so happy since he's been Luke's publisher. A goose that lays golden eggs. "Let's toast by drinking lots of caffeine," Luke said with a smile, raising his mug. Out of that $1 million, he will get 10%, which is USD 100,000. Even he would have a smile on his face if he got the news that he won 100,000 USD. "Cheers," said Josh, raising his cup and clinking it with Luke's. An hour later, the meeting with Josh ended. They conversed about the new novel and the Carrie movie that is planned to be filmed within the next few months. Payments, etc. "What are you going to do now?" asked Edgar as Luke left the coffee shop and started walking. "The day is sunny. We're on the crystal clear beach in Sarasota. I have plenty of money." "Of course, training," replied Luke, and Edgar, who was starting to get excited, grimaced. "How boring. Meet some girl and sleep with her. To stop thinking about your ex-girlfriend," suggested Edgar. "Sleep with her? I'm 15, man," Luke said with a grimace. He can't even do it with Enid, and he'd do it with a girl he barely knows. "So, I lost my virginity at 13. You're already late," Edgar said. "I'm not late. The average loss of virginity in America is 17, said Luke. "How do you know that?" asked Edgar, raising an eyebrow. "Photographic memory," replied Luke without further explanation. "I'm not sleeping around anyway. I'll just training," added Luke, ordering a cab to go to his rented house. "Let's see how long you last," said Edgar, leaving the subject aside. His offspring had money, fame, and good looks. He was 15 years old when hormones were hard to control, and he began to have more sexual desires. Add to that the fact that he was in Florida in the summer, living alone. The embryo don't care what Luke does, as long as he comes back at night and doesn't disappear. After 15 minutes, he arrived at his rented house. With the money he had, he rented a very large house in front of the beach. The rent was not cheap, but compared to his capital, it was very little. It could not be compared to the embryo mansion, but 10 people could live there comfortably. Luke used it for training and hanging out. Natasha knew nothing about it. Most likely, she doesn't like him living alone, but that's not entirely true, since he then goes back to the embryo. If she finds out, she'll be mad, thought Luke, entering the house and heading to the gym. Yes, the house had its own gym. Luke wasn't training to move more weight with his telekinesis. Edgar was teaching him how to fly. "I'll last more than 10 minutes flying today," Luke said with a slight smile. Flying was great, although his flight time was lousy and he moved at a snail's pace. Edgar told him that the flying technique is something that telekinetics who are at level 5 begin to learn, while he is at level 4 and has already learned the basics. He can even fly, even if only for a short time. At first glance, it might seem that lifting your body weight would be much easier than lifting large objects, but flying is a completely different and much more complex task. When you move objects, you have a clear and complete view of what you are manipulating. However, flying involves moving your own body. When attempting to fly, you do not have a full view of your own body. You can only see it in the first person, which means you don't have a full perspective of how your body is positioned in space. This greatly complicates the task of controlling telekinetic waves to move in a coordinated and stable manner in the air. So, to learn to fly, the telekinetic must develop an even deeper connection with his telekinetic waves, and usually, this is achieved when you are at level 5 minimally, or so the empirical evidence shows. However, this does not apply to Luke. This is thanks to the fact that he possesses a white aura. His extrasensory ability allows him to see his entire body, as if he has a 360-degree view. This is why the flight ability of someone with telekinesis and clairvoyance will be superior to that of normal telekinetics. Luke, by seeing his body from an external perspective, can easily observe how his telekinetic waves interact with his body and the surrounding environment. This allows him to adjust and control his telekinetic waves much more precisely and efficiently, greatly facilitating the process of learning to fly. Training on a beautiful sunny day at the beach, Edgar sighed internally. Although he liked Luke's dedication to training and exterminating the Spellmans at times, he was very extreme. He supposed this was because Luke broke up with Enid and had 2 friends who were far away. "You won't fly today. You're already moving too fast. I'll teach you a new technique," Edgar said, catching Luke's attention. "What is it? Go on, say it," said Luke in a rush. Although he didn't like to admit it, he was becoming a training nut. "Psychic barrier," replied Edgar. "Oh, I finally have the level to learn it," said Luke with a smile. His day was only getting better. He had long ago asked Edgar to teach him how to create a barrier to defend against attacks. A shield, like Protego from Harry Potter. According to Edgar, it was an advanced technique that he couldn't learn yet. "Yes," said Edgar, going on to explain the theory of the psychic barrier. "Go on, give it a try," said Edgar, finishing his explanation. It was shorter and less complex than Luke thought it would be, but he didn't say anything. Luke concentrated, and within seconds a translucent barrier appeared in front of him. The barrier completely covered Luke. It was a 4x4 frame. "Just that," thought Luke in confusion. He reached out his arm and touched the barrier. It was as solid as a wall. "Congratulations on your first barrier. Now try to change the shape. Make it cover your body completely, like a half circle and like that." "Bye," said Edgar. "Wait a minute," said Luke, stopping Edgar. "What's wrong?" asked Edgar. "You had told me that creating a simple barrier was difficult, but it's not," said Luke, looking at his barrier, which was still alive. Luke could feel it. Even if they shot him with a gun, the bullet wouldn't be able to break the barrier, even if they emptied the entire magazine. "Did I say that? I don't remember. Bye," Edgar said, stepping into the collar quickly. "This damn ghost," thought Luke, clenching his fists. He understood what happened here. His crazy great-great-grandfather always wants him to fight by putting his life on the edge. So, teaching him how to use a barrier would be counterproductive. Immobilization and flying were much more difficult than achieving a barrier. Luke would have learned it on his own, but he had no idea how to do it. Unlike superpowers, here you need the techniques to accomplish such things, unless you learn it instinctively, like Luke's telekinesis and psychic punch. A month has passed since the summer vacation began. Luke's routine remained unchanged. Training in his huge rented house near the beach, eating delicious food every day, and then spending as little time as possible at the Umbrio mansion. Natasha still didn't show up. She sent him a message, telling him she didn't know when she'd be here. She was looking for traces of where Luke's parents left the clues they collected from the Spellmans. Luke had become obsessed with training. He spent more time training than playing games or watching series, manga, etc. It was a surprise to him, as he had no one forcing him to do such a thing. This was due to the advances he made in all his abilities. He could fly like Superman, although he was still not as advanced. He was much improved compared to a month ago. He could now go for an hour without touching the ground. His barriers improved a lot. He even looked for different ways to use them. After all, they were solid structures. He could use them to trap a person or crush them against another solid structure. The only person he socialized with was Edgar, and he could only spend 4 hours outside the collar. The rest of the time he trained, or, with his photographic memory, searched for techniques from manga or movies from his past life that he could replicate with his 3 auras. I wonder if I can replicate One Piece's vision of the future, thought Luke, getting excited about having advanced observation haki. Clairvoyance had many similarities to this haki. It should be possible. He can use his 6th sense to interpret the future, even if only for a brief period. In a battle, it would be broken. Yes, it should be possible, muttered Luke under his breath with a smile as he thought of ways to replicate such an ability. He needs to get back to reality, thought Edgar, looking at Luke with concern. A 15-year-old teenager is training in solitary like a Shaolin monk. Hey, time to buy breakfast, said Edgar, bringing Luke back to reality. Oh, yes, let's, Luke said, feeling his stomach growl. Last night, he didn't eat because he kept thinking of ways to use his powers for a possible battle to the death. Go to the cheesecake store. The food looked delicious there, said Edgar. Huh, that's a long way away. I'll go to the nearest store, said Luke. He went there once to try different food. It was tasty, but he had to walk more. If he could fly, it would be great. But he didn't want hundreds of normies watching and recording him. Luke was staying on Lido Key, an island off the coast of Sarasota. To get downtown, he has a 4-mile commute. Thanks to the fact that he bought a bike, he can do it in about 20 minutes. Otherwise, he would have to walk for more than an hour. Come on, get some exercise. The food is worth it, Edgar said, continuing to convince Luke to go there. Fine, I'll go, Luke said. Tish, you can't even eat, he muttered, annoyed as he walked out of the house. Step 1 complete, thought Edgar with a faint smile. In that shop, he watched as a pretty girl looked at his grumpy, antisocial great-great-grandson. Although he was antisocial and unfriendly, Luke's looks were very good. Besides, he was famous on social networks, and several people could recognize him. To eat here or to go? Asked a girl with black hair as she looked at Luke. Eat here. Get out of that house with the blinds closed for a bit and enjoy some fresh air, said Edgar quickly. We're in a local, not in the fresh air, said Luke mentally. Sit near the window and watch the scenery, said Edgar without losing patience. The expensive house I rent has better views, said Luke. Your food will get cold, said Edgar. You have a point, said Luke. Eating cold food was not pleasant. Hello, said the girl. To eat here, replied Luke. Great. In a few minutes I'll bring you the food, said the girl with a different smile that Luke overlooked. Edgar did notice the change in the girl's attitude and smiled slightly. Step 2 is complete. Now everything depends on this girl, thought Edgar helplessly. His great-great-grandson was very innocent in these matters. Besides, his pride was too high, so he would not initiate a conversation himself. Luke sat down at a table for 2 near the window and surveyed the place. It didn't hurt to eat out occasionally. His fame wasn't like that of a celebrity who can't even go outside. He doesn't reach 1 million followers, and from time to time, he gets recognized on the street. Also, being a writer for a famous actor is very different. A lot of people could have read Carrie without even knowing who wrote the book or what the author looks like. At Nevermore, they recognized it since Carrie looks like a book by an outcast in the normie community, and it first came out in Jericho, where the academy is located. Sorry for the wait. Here's your food, said the girl who served Luke a few minutes ago. The girl held a tray and began to put everything on the table. A cheese omelet, bacon, biscuits, and a cappuccino. If you want anything else, just call me. I'm here for you, said the girl with a smile, staring at Luke. Oh, yes, thanks, Luke said, not paying attention. He looked down at his delicious breakfast. This guy, thought Edgar, shaking his head. Luke mentally conversed with Edgar as he ate his breakfast. They chatted about training and outcast stuff. After finishing, he asked for the bill. As he was getting up and about to leave, the girl who waited on him stopped him. "What's wrong?" asked Luke with a raised eyebrow. "Doesn't he realize or have no interest?" thought the girl, and her self-confidence was dropping. The whole time she was attending to Luke, she made subtle comments, but ones that showed interest. She considered herself pretty, and at her high school she was popular. "I was wondering if you would like to grab a drink," said the girl. "I already had my cappuccino," said Luke with a strange look on his face. "That's not what I mean. I mean, have a drink with me," said the girl, looking at Luke strangely. "She's asking you out," said Edgar with a blank look in his eyes. Oh, was that it? Being cooped up in that house talking to a crazy ghost for so long is taking its toll on me, thought Luke, feeling like an idiot. Luke took a closer look at the girl. She had sky-blue eyes like him, but her hair was black and her skin was pale, which made her light eyes stand out. She looked about his age or a little older. Her hair was shoulder-length, and she had beautiful features. Being asked out by a girl like that boosted his ego even more. However, the idea of spending too much time in the sunshine on a hot summer day didn't seem very tempting to Luke. He preferred to stay in his luxurious house with air conditioning and many other amenities. "If you want, you can come to my house," Luke suggested without realizing what this implied. "Your house, I don't know," said the girl hesitantly. That was going too fast. She wasn't that easy. "My house is on Lido Key. We can do everything there. I have a private beach movie theater," said Luke as he began to list all the luxuries that the house he rented had. The girl opened her mouth, slightly surprised that Luke was living in Lido Key, a luxurious and exclusive area. "Why is he coming here for breakfast?" the girl thought doubtfully. Lido Key had a shopping district with high-end restaurants. Instead, Luke was eating at the Cheesecake, a run-of-the-mill restaurant in downtown Sarasota. "Okay, I'll go. My name is Emily. Nice to meet you." "Luke, nice to meet you." "Can I go with some friends? These days, it's dangerous to go to strangers' houses for the first time," Emily said. She's not as much of an idiot as I thought Luke, having a better opinion of Emily. "How many are there?" he asked. "4 with me, 5, replied Emily. "Fine," replied Luke after a few seconds. He was only doing it because he found Emily attractive. Maybe he needed some more social time on this vacation and not be cooped up training like a nutcase. Luke slipped Emily his number, and they decided to work things out over there since the girl was still working. He went home and resumed his routine. Saturday came. That meant his date with Emily, or well, his meeting with the girl and her group of friends, since Luke didn't want to have a date in the sunshine. "Coming," Luke said, walking down the stairs and heading for the door. He opened the door and saw a group of 5 people. In the middle was Emily, who was wearing a tight black sleeveless top that highlighted her figure, especially 2 things Luke almost unconsciously averted his gaze at. Then she was wearing a tight, high-waisted short that showed off her waist and elongated her legs. Finally, some sandals and some accessories like earrings and bracelets. Seeing the sexy normie in front of him, Luke felt it was a good idea to invite her into his home. Besides Emily, there were 2 girls and 2 guys. It was an odd group. Emily looked like the typical, most popular girl in school. The others, on the other hand, seemed normal and a little nerdy. "I told you it was him," whispered a short boy, nudging Emily. Yeah, no doubt about it," said in a low tone a girl with short brown hair. "Shut up," muttered Emily, and then she looked at Luke with a smile. "Hi, Luke. These are my friends. Bethany, Jack, Penny, and Leonard," said Emily, introducing everyone quickly. "Hi, come on in," said Luke, and they all walked in. "Whoa, this house is big," said Leonard, dumbfounded looking at the luxurious house. "You weren't lying about living on Lido Key," commented Emily. "You didn't believe me?" asked Luke with a slight smile. "Don't blame me. It was hard to believe that a guy who eats breakfast at Cheesecake is living in an apartment with a private beach on Lido Key," said Emily, playfully bumping her shoulder into Luke's. If you had recognized it was Luke Poe, you would have believed him, said Leonard, and Luke raised an eyebrow. Oh, did you read Carrie? Asked Luke. Yes, we brought it for you to sign, said everyone except Emily, pulling Carrie out of their backpacks. Sure, gladly, said Luke, taking the books and reaching for a pen. It was weird to find 4 fans together. It seemed Emily's friends were better than he had first thought. I also didn't imagine that the person I was talking to was a famous writer, Emily said with a strange expression. She only invited Luke because she thought he was cute. She didn't know he was a writer. You would have known him if you continued to read books that others consider nerdy, Jack commented, and the others nodded. There you go with that again, muttered Emily, dropping the subject. Time passed. Luke and his new friends spent time in the luxurious house. To his surprise, Emily's friends had many things in common with him: video games, anime, manga, fiction novels, pop culture, etc. They were all nerds, except for Emily. Luke realized that she was friends with Bethany, Leonard, and the others because they were childhood friends. Only Emily, because of her beauty, went the way of the popular, but she was still in touch with her old friends. Thanks to this, it was a very fun afternoon. They played video games on the huge 65-inch TV, watched Star Wars, Episode I in the private movie theater, and then went to the private beach. I didn't think you'd like Star Wars and playing video games, Emily said with a slight smile. She was sitting on the sand, looking out at the beautiful sea with crystal-clear water. Next to her was Luke. The others were playing in the sea. Disappointed? Asked Luke, looking at Emily, who was wearing a bikini. As Luke had told her there was a beach, she had come prepared like the others. No, I was just a little surprised. I'm used to it because of my friends, replied Emily, looking at Luke and lowering her gaze a little towards Luke's bare torso. Luke had a toned torso, visible abs, and muscular, defined arms. This is due to all the training he's done since meeting Natasha a year ago. His outcast metabolism makes getting muscle much easier compared to a normie. In other words, his genetics are much better, and even though he's 15, he fits the Netflix teen stereotype. Besides, with that body and that face, I don't care if you're a nerd, thought Emily, looking at Luke's body. Is that an insinuation? Thought Luke. Although Emily didn't know it, that thought was read by him. Luke had already mastered the ability to read a person's current thoughts. Though there was a range of how far he should be from this person, it was best to look at his target, although the latter was not necessary if he had the target very close to him. Emily looked up and noticed Luke staring at her. She was a little embarrassed, as she had watched him without disguise. She was more surprised when Luke slowly brought his face closer and closer to hers. He's going to kiss me. Easy, Emily. Slowly move closer and close your eyes, Emily thought nervously. Luke read her thoughts and had to hold back his laughter. It was rare for someone to be named in the third person. Their lips met, and they began to kiss as the sun dipped below the horizon. His lips taste good. I'd like to touch his tongue, Emily thought as she kissed Luke more passionately. Well, if that's what you want, thought Luke, starting a French kiss. Reading minds had its advantages in these things, besides battles to the death. After a few minutes, they both broke apart. For a first kiss, it was quite long and racy as they used their tongues. Unromantic compared to Luke's first moonlight kiss he had with Enid, but hey, he knew his relationship with Emily was fleeting. After the passionate kiss, they returned to the house. Since it was getting dark, they had to go back to their homes. Hey Luke, can we stay in tonight? Asked Jack casually. He usually doesn't get along with boys his age, since he's a nerd and the target of bullies, but with Luke, he'd had a great time. Besides, the house had plenty of rooms. Spending the night here should be great. Emily and the others looked over to Luke, who was pouring himself a glass of orange juice on the rocks. Well done, Jack. I hope he says yes, thought Emily. This time her thoughts were not read by Luke, as he was paying attention not to spill his glass. Yeah, why not? Replied Luke, looking sideways at Emily. Great. We get to see Star Wars Episode II, Attack of the Clones. exclaimed Leonard excitedly. We can finish watching all the movies, suggested Jack with a smile. You've seen those movies dozens of times already, said Emily, shaking her head. You girls are staying, asked Jack, looking at the girls, who nodded instantly. I'll text Veronica that I'm not going today, thought Luke. Luke opened his eyes slowly. The sun's rays were streaming through the curtains in his room, illuminating his face a little. What time is it? Thought Luke, looking around. He noticed a black hair resting on his chest. Oh yeah, we did it, thought Luke, remembering the night before. He lost his virginity to Emily, a hot girl he barely knew. He didn't even know her last name. Who knew that before he had his first time, he murdered a person. It wasn't as pleasurable an experience as he imagined, but it wasn't bad either. He was more nervous than when he fought Sabrina Spellman to the death. Murmured Emily, opening her eyes and noticing that she was sleeping on Luke's bare chest. You've got some nice pecs, commented Emily with a slight smile as she touched them. Thanks, I guess, said Luke, getting up from the bed and pushing Emily away, who puffed out her cheeks, annoyed at being ignored. Don't ignore me, Emily said, hugging Luke from behind. I had a good time last night. For your first time, you did really well. You have talent, she added with a giggle. Tell me something I don't know, Luke thought without saying anything. He didn't really like people violating his personal space. He had met Emily a day ago. He only let her hug him because he felt her breasts against his back, and it was a nice feeling. How did you know it was my first time? Asked Luke, a little curious. He hadn't told Emily. I could tell by your nervous expression, different from the confident expression you showed all day yesterday, Emily replied, starting to kiss Luke's neck. Do you want to do it again? She's more daring since we had our first kiss, thought Luke with a strange expression on his face. Just then someone knocked twice on the bedroom door. Are you awake? There's nothing to eat. We need you to open the door for us so we can go buy something. Wait a minute, Emily said, raising her voice, annoyed at being interrupted. They both got dressed and left the room. Bethany, Leonard, and the others were already awake and looked with slight smiles at Emily. I'm going to go to the bathroom. Wait for me for a minute, said Luke, who wanted to brush his face and teeth. So, congratulations on doing it with Carrie's writer, said Bethany, approaching Emily. I didn't know you were into minors, commented Jack in a teasing tone. Minors? What are you talking about? Asked Emily, confused. You should read Luke Poe's Wikipedia on Google. He's 15. He turned less than 2 months ago, replied Leonard. 15 years old, repeated Emily in surprise. No way, he doesn't look 15 at all. His height, his hot muscles, even his personality, muttered Emily. Stop rambling, said Penny. Well, we're both minors. It only took him 2 years. It's no big deal, said Emily. That's for now. In less than a month, you'll be 18. It will be an illegal relationship in the eyes of the law, Leonard said, and the others nodded. They just wanted to annoy their friend. Luke came back from the bathroom and had breakfast with Emily and the others. After that, he told them he had things to do. Training, that is. He could be with them longer, but he wanted his personal space. Summer vacation flew by. Luke's summer was more fun than he had thought it would be. Even though he spent the whole summer with the Umbrio, he barely saw them. Natasha came back, but Luke was able to convince her that he didn't need to be with them all the time as if he were in jail. The Spellmans would not attack him, because if they did, they would be starting a conflict with the Umbrio. It was better to wait until school started. In fact, he was right. No one attacked him during the 3 months of vacation. In addition to training, he spent Saturdays and Sundays with Emily and her group of friends in their huge, luxurious house. Although he got along well with Leonard and the others since they had common hobbies, what he enjoyed most was his training sessions with Emily in the evenings. Thanks to this normie girl, he was able to forget, if only a little bit, about Enid. He knew that he lived in a different world from Emily, so he had no emotional attachment to her. They both lived in different states. He never thought of starting a relationship with her. "Can't you move here and sign up for my school?" asked Emily, lying on top of Luke and making semicircles on his chest. In 4 days, classes would start, and Luke would return to Jericho with Natasha. Emily, in these months, learned a lot about Luke, although she gained more information thanks to the internet and Wikipedia. She learned that he was an orphan, that he was expelled from his previous school in Boston because of bullies, and a few other things that were public from interviews he had. So she knew Luke could move if he wanted to, since he had the money and the freedom to do so. "I can't. My legal guardian is very stubborn. I have to move back to Vermont," Luke replied, putting all the blame on Natasha. Vermont was the state where Jericho was located. "Besides, if I do that, your normie school might get massacred," thought Luke, sighing internally. The Spellman would attack him without hesitation if he was in a normie school, and normies could be killed by crossfire. "Oh, come on, do it for me, will you?" asked Emily, kissing Luke suddenly. "Do it for you," thought Luke, looking at Emily indifferently as she kissed him. He only saw Emily as a girl he could satisfy his sexual needs with, an area he was new to. He felt no love for the girl. With Enid, he risked his life to save her. With Emily, he would not. On the other hand, Luke realizes that Emily is attracted to him because of his looks and money. She used his huge house with a jacuzzi, private beach, movie theater, and many more luxuries. Luke bought Emily luxurious clothes on her birthday, which was recently, and noticed that she loved them. The power of money. He didn't blame her. They both used each other, if you could say that in a way, and they also got along well. "No is no," replied Luke, ending the kiss and giving no more room for discussion. "You're bad," said Emily, dissatisfied. At this time, she noticed Luke's indifference, but that made her like him more. "What are we?" asked Emily after a few seconds of silence. "How?" asked Luke, not understanding the question. "You and me, what are we?" "Organisms made up of cells, tissues, organs, and systems that work together to keep us alive," replied Luke. "What?" asked Emily, puzzled. "That's not what I mean. What is our relationship?" asked Emily. "I knew this would happen. I shouldn't have gotten together with her this past weekend," thought Luke. His biological desires had won out over his rationality. Somehow Luke managed to take the conversation somewhere else and said goodbye to Emily, saying they would talk by video call and message. There was a reason for the internet. The vacation was over. Luke returned to Vermont with Natasha. The trip was shorter since they went by plane. Then they took a bus to Jericho and returned to their apartment. Tomorrow, he would start classes at Nevermore. Thanks for watching this episode. Like, share, and follow for more interesting stories and narrations. Thanks a lot.